Kids a chore, I don't know you anymore. No, you never liked your parents. Any depressing things that would mess with your head. Now you're always calling wasted in a basement, saying that you lost all your friends. I don't know, guess Johnny's dead. Got a new ambition, dropped out of bands, eviction, not showing up. You're on the floor, I don't know you anymore. No, you always liked your brother, known as a lover. Things would never mess with your head. Now you're always calling angry, happy, or can't see, saying that you needed a friend. I don't know, guess Johnny's dead. I don't know, guess Johnny's dead. No, you never liked your parents. Any depressing things that would mess with your head. Now you're always calling wasted in a basement, saying that you lost all your friends. No, you always liked your brother, known as a lover. Things would never mess with your head. Now you're always calling angry, happy, or can't see, saying that you needed a friend. I don't know, guess Johnny's dead. I don't know, guess Johnny's dead. I don't know, guess Johnny's dead.
That was Johnny's Dead by Winona Fighter here on a late night edition of Cosmic Metal. And I am here with a very special guest, Travis Bartosh. Travis, how you doing?
Hey, you're doing pretty good. I'm happy to be here, be on the show.
Yeah, no, this will be fun. So, Travis, the main purpose of this late night Cosmic Metal special is I'm doing a how-to project for one of my broadcast journalism classes on how podcasting kind of works in the modern day and how simple it can be. Also, how radio kind of came back from the dead. Kind of are kind of my two main questions. First question is going to be like, what would you say to someone who is looking to start their own podcast as you manage, 70 different kind of online radio podcasts?
It's 78 this semester.
78.
Yeah, and I think that we have about 150 student DJs that are part of the radio station. And yeah, we encourage all of them to broadcast live, but then we capture that live recording, do some light editing, and then upload it as a podcast for on-demand listening afterwards. And I'm going to do some foreshadowing right now because that, I think, is the answer to the radio question of, like, isn't radio dead? Do we do radio anymore? Who listens to an FM, AM signal while they're driving around in their car? I've got that answer for you. Okay. But I think before we get to that answer, it's the first answer that you posited to me was, like, how can somebody just put together a podcast? Like, everybody is doing it, right? Is that kind of what you want to talk about? So I don't know, what specifically is the question? I know we were talking earlier and you said, like, it's so easy to get a podcast. Like, how easy is it?
Well, my kind of question, my whole thing is that, at least for me, when I'm recording podcasts, Zoom and 2 iPhones is about all. Two laptops, Zoom, and 2 iPhones is about all you need to record a decent sounding podcast. And I was kind of wondering what's your perspective on that, because personal anecdote, iPhone microphones for some unknown reason are passable for 99.999% of applications, and a lot of people don't. I feel like a lot of people don't realize that you can quite easily just use your phone as a microphone,
Yeah.
and it'll work out fine.
Yeah.
What would you kind of say to that effect? I know you run a radio station, but pretend you're not talking to Chapman students. I guess is my main point there.
Yeah, so I think you're totally right. If we're going from what is the most entry level, how do we get into podcasting? I think for sure it can be done on phones in particular. If we're talking about just the audio, right? Mm-hmm. If we're talking about just audio, not incorporating video yet, because that's where my background is audio, is certainly, it doesn't seem like every generation of phone that comes out, and we'll kind of use your example, the iPhone, the microphone gets better and better and better. And in fact, I even tell students that if they can't get down to the radio station to record in our nice Shure SM7B industry standard microphones, that go into your closet where there's like a lot of clothes that are hanging around so that you can deaden the sound, and then speak directly into the microphone on your phone in voice memos. And then when you're done, edit that recording, and there's a button in the edit function called enhance recording. And you just hit that button, and it does basically like a noise reduction. So it takes out like background sound and kind of reverb stuff. It just it overall boosts the recording a little bit. So if that's where you want to go, if that's where you want to start, you can certainly just use an iPhone, go into a room that has as good of acoustics as possible. I even had one student say, like, I was sitting in bed and I just threw the covers over my head, and then that works to help deaden the sound because you have all that fabric.
The Micro Airport sound booth.
Yes. Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, Micro of Dirty Jobs fame, and he narrated a bunch of Discovery shows as well. He is famous for most of his recordings being with a microphone plugged into an interface, plugged into a laptop, with a hoodie over top of him at an airport. Yep. That is how he did everything while he was doing both Dirty Jobs and all his narration stuff for Discovery. So that's a really common way of doing voiceover, especially when you're... Guerrilla is kind of the right term when you're doing it guerrilla style, or just like on the run.
Yeah.
So that's a great piece of advice, is just to do the old blanket. I do find, this is a personal anecdote, weighted blankets are the best sound booths that you can buy for under $10,000.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And speaking about doing things more on like low key for budget, I think that you can get a really good USB microphone for super cheap, under $100. You can get one.
Yeti.
Yeah,
Blue Yeti microphone will take you as far as you want to go with it.
That'll get you going. Like you said, an interface would be good.
Doesn't have to
be. But something that I've recently came across that I'm going to start introducing the radio station to, and there was a radio drama that I mentioned to you before we jumped on air called Fiction Junkie. And the host of that show said, "Hey, I need to be able to play 60 sound effects during my show."
Jesus Christ.
And I was like, "Oh, dang, we only have half of that available on our automation software. I think we've got 30 slots." But I was reminded by our broadcast engineer, there's this website called mycartwall.com.
Okay.
And MyCartwall is super cool. You can use it for free. They also have like a subscription option, and this is where you can upload any sound you want to a hotkey.
That's cool. So it's an Elgato Stream Deck. For those of you that don't know, it's Elgato Stream Deck is this pad,
we have a Stream Deck right there. Yeah.
So
in studio, show it to the camera there.
Yes. Oh. Don't break. So it's basically one of these, which that is a bunch of buttons with OLED displays underneath them.
Yep.
That you can map hotkeys to. If you're an editor, you've probably seen or used if you're a video editor, you've probably used these daily. They're fantastic because you can just rebind any macro that you want to them. And
if you're a hardcore gamer too, gamers use them as well.
I've never actually known what what you would use them. I guess it's because I only play racing games with first-person shooters.
Yeah, I don't play games, but but I've heard that they do.
I still have no idea what you. I know that's what it's advertised for. I still have no idea what you would use it for in a non-streaming setting.
Yeah. But anyway, this My Cart Wall is, like I said, it's free, and you can upload any audio file that you want to the hotkeys, and you can save it so that you can pull it up on any computer. And those can be your either songs or sound effects or music beds, like, any audio file you can upload to it, and then it's a hotkey. So you just click it and it starts playing audio.
That's cool.
So as long as you can link that to, and this is where figuring out the interface and routing it into some type of recording software would come into play.
Well, in Chapman Radio, correct me if I'm wrong, you would just play it on here. Well, I guess recording it would be a different matter. You would just play it on this computer that we're currently recording on, and then just turn up the computer fader, right? For Chapman Radio specifically.
Right, yeah, for us, if you're sitting with your laptop at home, you would have to route the audio from the My Cart Wall or wherever else into recording software.
I'm gonna have to look this up later, so this might not make this might end up on the cutting room floor. I'm pretty sure you could just open up a screen recorder.
Yeah.
You could just
there
open up a screen recorder. I know Windows has one built in. I know Mac has one built in.
Yep.
And as long as you're making sure you're grabbing audio, then if this is all assuming you're not doing this live. Remind me the name of the show. that uses this workflow.
Fiction Junkie.
Fiction Junkie.
It's an old school radio drama, like 1930s radio drama type of thing.
I have the utmost respect. I think I've listened to a couple episodes. They are so well done for being done on precisely this much budget. Mm-hmm. Like for precisely zero money. They are so well done, and I have so much respect to her. What's her name? I'm trying to plug her because that's a
Sophie.
Fan.
Sophie Worley.
Sophie Worley on Fiction Junkie.
Also a Dodge kid.
I think
all of them are Dodge kids.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But that is absolutely rad.
But I would say, like, if it was, you can go just your iPhone, as long as you've got an audio file that you can get, you can get a podcast on Spotify. I would say if you're really serious about starting out and you want a starting point, I would go USB microphone, My Cart Wall, and like you said, the screen capture recording.
Yeah,
that would
screen
be
capture, and then
super
Audacity is fine as a recording interface.
Yep.
It's completely free, and it will get you 90% of the way you need to go.
For sure.
If you're in, I don't know if this is exclusive to Dodge, or if this is a Chapman wide thing. But Chapman students, I think, have full access to the Adobe Creative Cloud.
Yeah, it's all every Chapman student.
Great.
Yep.
And I think that's just the case for most colleges. My dad once compared Adobe's marketing to cigarette marketing, and he is spot on. Where they get college students hooked on them, so they have to use it for the rest of their life if they work in creative fields.
Yeah. I don't think Adobe Audition will kill you. But
no, but he compared
where he's going.
The same marketing. It's one of my favorite anecdotes. But Audition's fine. It's a little unstable at times if you have a session open too long. But
yeah,
it depends.
Yeah.
But anyways, 90% of the recording software that you can find online, whether it be Audacity, a pirated copy of Audition if your university doesn't have a deal with Adobe, pirate Adobe software. No one's gonna care, and it's really easy to do. You can't legally say that.
I don't know if I can or not. I don't know.
Either way, no one's gonna feel bad if you pirate Adobe software.
I think Adobe's doing okay.
Yeah, they're gonna be fine.
Okay.
They're not missing your $20 a month. But okay, moving on to my kind of next question: how did radio kind of resurrect itself effectively? Because I don't think most people realize this. Podcasts are just radio.
Yes,
they're just so. Why do you think?
But typically not live.
Typically not live, but also generally kind of the format was dead as a whole until I guess I don't know who would have been the first big podcaster, Joe Rogan, as much as I don't care for him.
Yeah, that's a good question. There was I was actually just reminded that the comedian Mark Maron was kind of like the first really big podcaster that got a big contract and was getting really big names to interview. And I think Mark Maron would have been before Joe Rogan.
I guess if you want to go real technical, it would have been Howard Stern.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, there's another thing
Wait.
too, right? Is that Howard Stern moved from terrestrial radio to satellite radio.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's another thing is satellite radio. And then now there's podcasting. Obviously, there's more traditional radio over terrestrial airwaves. There's live streaming, like what Chapman Radio does online.
What we're doing now.
Yeah. So people bring that question to me and say like, "Ah, isn't radio dead?" And part of me wishes like I'm not going to do this, but I would like to change Chapman Radio to Chapman Audio
That's fair.
because audio is more popular than ever. Audio has been popular, is not going away.
Has never
ever.
really gone away. It's just changed where you go for it.
Right, and even I was reminded I teach a class called communication theory, and we were looking at a theory about mass media, mass communication, and it started out with like people have always told stories. That's what makes us human, and we're not going to stop telling stories. And I think that's what radio is. That's what podcasting is. That's what satellite radio is. That's what streaming is telling a story. And so, yeah, maybe a lot of people aren't listening to AM, FM radio anymore, but that's just a medium. Like there's always going to be different mediums. And I'm sure that, 20 years from now, there'll be some crazy type of audio-based medium that we haven't even thought of yet that we're going to start experiencing. But at the root, it's people talking with each other, telling stories, and sharing. And I don't think that's ever going away. So when people say like, "Oh, radio's dead," it's like, well, maybe one medium is declined, but like there's a whole other bunch of mediums that are doing the same exact thing that are more popular than ever.
Yeah. It was such a funny realizing that podcasts were the same thing as radio, because a lot of people just don't realize, because if you're under the age of, I guess now would be what, 25, 26 years old, like if you were born around the turn of the millennium, radio has been dead for the vast majority, like radio, AMF, like terrestrial radio. And this is not me. This is not us shitting on terrestrial radio. No. I was a terrestrial radio DJ for years, and all throughout high school, which is how I ended up here. So terrestrial radio is the foundation for what podcasts are, and I think without it, we don't have literally any of this. We don't have Joe. We don't have the massive podcast. We don't have Rogan. We don't have. I mean, what's another? Why am I blanking on other massive podcast names right now? But I mean, we don't even have like ESPN shows. If anyone like ESPN, like most sports shows these days are just podcasts that have a camera on them.
Talk shows.
Yeah.
Talk shows.
Most talk shows are just podcasts with a bigger visual element.
And even that is kind of interesting, is that the audio format is now, like, video is creeping into it. Because something caught me a few months ago where I was talking to a student about a podcast, and the way the student was describing the podcast was, I watched the podcast instead of I listened to the podcast.
That's interesting. I've never been one of those people that will like sit down and watch podcast. I think we're about to get kicked out of the station.
No, that's fine. I know these people.
Okay. But I've never like sat down and watched a podcast, or if I do, it's because I looked up the audio on YouTube and then put it in just a random tab so I can listen to it while I'm doing stuff. Why do you think people are so engrossed to look at the video of a podcast? Because generally that's never been a component of this medium before.
Well, I think, like, speaking about mediums, it's all about convenience, I think, right? And so when I go to the gym, it's not convenient for me to look at a screen because I'm doing other things. Like, I have my earbuds in. When you're walking around campus, you don't Well, I shouldn't say that. You do see people with like their phones out.
Yeah.
But you also see people just walking with earbuds in. If you happen to be sitting in front of a laptop, it's convenient to be able to throw on a video and you get the visual element to it. So I think that like thinking about mediums, right, is it's not convenient to listen to terrestrial radio a lot of the time
No.
because terrestrial radio has limitations. Distance is an issue. If you're a certain distance away from the antenna, you'll lose the signal. If you go underground, you'll lose a signal. If you're just in a dead spot for some reason, you'll lose a signal. But if you have a live, if you're streaming online, like I was in Doha at the beginning of the year, and I could monitor our radio station from the other side of the planet.
Oh wow, that is a really good point. And also, there's limits on where you can hear it. There's also limits on what you can hear, as well.
Oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's a whole other conversation.
That is kind of a whole other conversation. But if anyone's listening to Cosmic Metal for literally any amount of time, I think 90% of the songs that I have in mine are not the clean version. Are not the clean version. I mean, the one I'll play us out on eventually is when I actually I'm gonna play something that I think we'll both like. But it's interesting. I guess I understand how it came back, but it's interesting to me that it did in the first place, because everyone until really the early 2010s, when it started really taking off, everyone had written off this format as being anything. Mm-hmm. Which is I just think is interesting.
What, like streaming?
Not streaming, podcasting. Exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
Streaming. I guess streaming is a format now, isn't it? I guess it would have been better to call this a medium, but
yeah. I mean, it's all they do podcasting, streaming, terrestrial radio, satellite radio. Like they all have their own little niche. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they all do their own thing. But at the end of the day, I have to go back to it. It's audio and it's storytelling. Like that is never going away. So like I encourage students, like, get involved in radio, because radio is just this word that's a catch-all for audio. Audio is not going away anytime soon. You just have to be adaptive to figure out what the next medium is. But
just hopefully it's not that Elon Musk head implant thing.
no, for sure. That's 100% sure where things could be going. What is that? Neuralink.
Neuralink. I will be the old man yells at cloud of like tech mods. Dude, I don't want anything touching my brain. There's already too much wrong with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, but that's a good point. I mean, that could be the future of audio medium.
Which I wonder, we were talking about radio drama. We were talking about like fully acted out radio dramas earlier. That's a whole other way to do it. That'd be a whole new way of acting it out. Could you imagine basically having Dolby Atmos at all points?
I was just going to say, like, what if a new audio medium there's some type of like feel sensory to it? So when somebody knocks on the door, or like somebody throws a punch and lands it, like there's haptics involved. So like you feel the punch, like you feel the wind. That would be a crazy way to experience audio.
We're going down so many sci-fi rabbit hole warnings that I've seen. I'm immediately reminded of like a Ready Player One or
for sure
kind of thing.
For sure. I think that's the way that the world's going, that society's going, is more into a virtual world.
More than likely, because it's not like we're doing this one any favors.
Yeah.
This version of it any favors. All right. Well, it's about 10 o'clock. I think I have to let you go so that you can actually do your duties.
We've got a Chapman radio meeting here at 10 o'clock.
Running a radio station.
I didn't feel like the expert here. I just felt like we had a conversation. I don't know what I can